Hello everyone, welcome, good morning, so good to see you back again, and welcome to the first session of the academic bit of the conference, whose theme is Women in the Collections of the Library, or Women in the American Musical in the Collections of the Library of Congress. Our first speaker is Dr. Megan Woller, who's co-director of the School of Communication and the Arts and Associate Professor at Gannon University and the new series editor of Oxford Broadway Legacies as of a couple of weeks ago. So I'm very delighted to welcome her, taking over from Jeffrey Block, who has served for 20 years across the two series. Giving rise to, how many books is it in total across the two series?
25.
A mere 25 books, which in itself is a huge service to the field. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Woller to give her paper on Sylvia Fine.
Paperless here, so let me pull up. All right. While her name is often coupled with her famous husband, Danny Kaye, Sylvia Fine nevertheless had a successful and varied career on her own terms. In fact, in much of the literature, Fine's name is inextricably linked with Kaye's, while his is not necessarily always linked with hers. Just a note on this image before I move on. He did appear on the musical comedy Tonight series, but it was the second episode. He wasn't in the first, so that is what this image is from the taping of that. For much of Fine's early career, she not only wrote songs for Kaye, but managed a great deal of his professional performances. She was highly prolific and successful, yet largely appears in passing or as a footnote in most American musical theater and film musical histories. Even on the scholarship that focuses on women, she's often just in a kind of laundry list of female songwriters. Generally speaking, Kaye and Fine's careers diverged more as she started to focus more on being a producer and educator in the later part of her career. Fine utilized her extensive experience and knowledge of the industry to become a scholar of musical theater. She taught high-profile guest lecturer classes at the University of Southern California in 1972, then Yale University in 1975. Soon after the Yale lectures, she leveraged her research to create a series of television specials. In the 1970s and 80s, PBS aired a three-part series entitled Musical Comedy Tonight. In each episode, star performances were a significant part of the show. Some examples from, I'll go through the first episode in a little bit more detail, but some examples from the 80s episodes include Dick Van Dyke, Elaine Stritch, and of course, Danny Kaye, as pictured earlier. Fine produced, wrote, and hosted the specials, and similar to Leonard Bernstein's televised lectures, they represent a significant and engaging public form of music history education. This paper delves into the creation and impact of Sylvia Fine's Musical Comedy Tonight series, utilizing the Library of Congress's archives. The Danny Kaye and Sylvia Fine collection houses a host of materials related to Musical Comedy Tonight, both online, which I encourage you to check out, and on site. From Fine's proposal to extensive research materials, rehearsal schedules, financials, scripts, congratulatory notes, and more, the collection tracks the life of the shows from start to finish. In this paper, I will focus specifically on the materials leading up to the first 90-minute special, as well as the first show itself, in order to illustrate Fine's intense level of involvement at every stage of the project. While any televised show is necessarily a collaborative endeavor, the Musical Comedy Tonight series feels like an absolute labor of love from Sylvia Fine. Before delving into the genesis of this series, I'd like to give some context related to the first television special. Musical Comedy Tonight aired on October 1st, 1979. It was produced by KCET, the PBS station out of LA, and picked up as part of the Great Performances series, which as a whole focuses on the performing arts. As host, Fine provides historical context, production history, and the significance or legacy for each of the musicals covered, as well as conducting interviews and generally introducing her American musical history with lots of charm and a fondness for one-liners. The first special covers Good News from 1927, Anything Goes from 1934, Oklahoma from 43, and then skips to 1970 with Company. These educational TV specials also, as I mentioned, featured performances of musical numbers from each of the representative examples, as well as interviews. And the first special included Carol Burnett, Richard Chamberlain, Agnes DeMille, Rock Hudson, Ethel Merman, and Bernadette Peters. The initial television special was a success and garnered Fine a Peabody Award. So I have here just a general timeline leading up to orient everyone with what I'm working with here. It gets incredibly granular, of course, but I wanted to at least provide some chronology, and I'll get into a little bit more detail, specifically starting kind of in 75 with the proposals through the 1979 special here. And of course, I'm for time not talking about the second and third, but they also did quite well. And there are lots of clips, particularly from 2 and 3 that are up on the Library of Congress website. So again, I encourage you to check that out. After her highly successful university lectures, Fine began to conceptualize how she might further bring her musical theater history research to the public. Early proposals from 1975-76 were for a book, and at this time she had already identified 3 of the 4 shows that would be in Musical Comedy Tonight 1. She in this list, this is from August 1975. She separates the list into the great musicals, maybe innovative, and great scores. So both Good News and Oklahoma appear as representative of innovative musicals, while Anything Goes falls under great scores. And so, like I mentioned, the first televised special would eventually also include Company. It didn't make this early list. However, Sondheim does appear on this list of composer-lyricists. And I'd also like to point out that Sylvia Fine puts herself in this list, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I'm very obsessed with it. As the project evolved, these proposals morphed into a Kennedy Center benefit event proposal, and then finally the KCET PBS proposed special. And NEH grant proposals are also found in the collection as the concept was evolving into the PBS series. Throughout the proposal process, and regardless of format, Fine emphasizes a combination of education and entertainment. The full proposal states that, quote, "In short, this will be an entertainment series that is educational, and an educational show that is entertaining, because by the very nature of the material, a large part of the education will be entertainment." Another key aspect of the proposal materials is the eminent suitability of Sylvia Fine to spearhead this endeavor. Not only are her successful USC and Yale lectures cited, the proposal even notes that over 200 students applied for a 12-seat seminar at Yale. But her lengthy career and therefore industry connections are mentioned as well. Specifically, Fine contends, and was absolutely correct, that she has the ability to get stars and creators involved in the project, as well as obtain grand rights for many of the shows. All in all, the proposal claims that this series will be, quote, unique in television and will be a first in the field. While Fine's proposal envisioned a 13-part series, KCET ordered a 90-minute pilot, then produced the 2 more shows after the success of the first. Once the program was greenlit, Fine and her team, both her personal office assistants and PBS personnel, began various forms of outreach. Securing grant or performing rights for desired shows was a key part of the preparation, and Fine was directly involved in a number of ways. The Library of Congress materials include handwritten notes in which Fine lists who she needs to call and who will get a letter. In some cases, it was both. As a representative example, I would like to highlight Fine's June 4th, 1977 letter to Richard Rodgers. Although her explanations of the show itself are from a standard form letter that went out to a lot of different songwriters, flattery is also a key component to consider in her outreach. To Rodgers, she states, "Actually, it didn't take too much study on my part to determine that the spine of musical comedy was built by just a few men. Jerry Kern, who along with P.G. Wodehouse and Guy Bolton started it all, and Richard Rodgers. First with Larry Hart, and then with Oscar Hammerstein, you took it out of infancy and built it to maturity with bold experiment, imagination, and not a little talent. Genius is more apt." While I haven't seen Rodgers reply, the inclusion of Oklahoma certainly implies a positive response. Throughout the pre- and post-production processes, Sylvia Fine clearly played a significant role in every step. While several assistants gathered additional research for the series, she had whole packets where it would just list things that were happening in any given year for the shows that they were considering putting in. So they helped provide a lot of the historical context, which is a big part of her introductions to the shows. Fine's own lectures did form the basis of the script, which she wrote. She was the writer for this as well. Her papers also indicate that she worked on revising the scripts in great detail. Handwritten revisions include substantial line editing with Fine making cuts and wordsmithing the entire script. And she not only, of course, edited her own introductions and dialogue, but interactions between participating stars. So I have an example here. Rock Hudson and Ethel Merman appeared together. So they, yes, it's very funny. and they definitely make jokes about how he can't sing and things like that. But they have some banter, and then they actually do a performance of You're the Top from Anything Goes together. So you can see here she's editing their banter together before rehearsals. Additionally, Fine reviewed and made suggestions on the rehearsal schedules. She also made extensive notes regarding the post-production editing, inserting ideas for when more pictures might be needed for specific scenes, the types of shots. They had 2 nights of filming, so she viewed those and decided which shots she wanted, and sweetening notes when they wanted extra applause, laughter, things like that. Before considering a short case study, I want to mention the music for the performances. In the broadcasts, Fine claims that they are using as many original orchestrations, quote, as we could get our hands on, which is rather a grand, sweeping statement for what is very clearly a much more complicated situation than it makes it sound. I have a lot more work to do to parse this statement out, From the correspondence related to getting the grant or performing rights, as well as the process of actually obtaining the copies from the publishers. This was clearly not always possible to get the original orchestrations based on what the various licensing companies even had access to. Not all of these were going to be surviving. Plus, there's the fact that some, but not all, of the instrumental parts used in the 3 episodes have been preserved. So I have some of that, but it's only a few songs. And additionally, Peter Matz is listed as a ranger in the materials related to all 3 of the televised specials. So I would have quite a bit of triangulation to do in the future between the varying archival materials and anything I might be able to get my hands on in terms of the show's scores. If I want to get really to the bottom of that statement, it's basically an entire different project from what I'm working on now, but it's already clear to me, again, that Fine's statement is, which she says in all 3 of the specials, is rather sweeping, and it's an incredibly complex situation. For this paper, however, we can witness Fine's level of involvement by considering the preparation for her interview with Agnes de Mille, because a number of materials related to this interview have their own folder, which was very nice, in this section of the Musical Comedy Tonight papers. In the televised show, the de Mille interview accompanied scenes from Oklahoma's ballet. In the preparation stages for the show, Fine specifically reached out to a number of figures that she hoped would not only give permission to use the copyrighted material, but appear on the show. So while Jerome Robbins very politely declined due to his schedule, Agnes de Mille agreed. So on December 29th, 1978, Fine sent a letter to de Mille that included it's just a list of 15 questions for their interview to prepare her. Of course, Fine gives de Mille the opportunity to eliminate unnecessary questions, change the order, or otherwise help shape the direction of the interview. And early scripts just use Fine's questions as the basis for this section of the program. The section devoted specifically to this interview contains revised scripts that illustrate the process of the talk between the two being worked out through the rehearsal dates for blocking and, of course, taping, eventually the taping, with varying wordings to describe the ballet and de Mille's experience. So I have here just pictured as an example 2 versions of the scripted interview that coincide with the blocking rehearsal dates, so kind of built off of that. So unsurprisingly, this interview was carefully crafted through the rehearsal and revision process. Once the final full pilot aired in October 1979, the shape of the interview clearly follows these scripted sections. Exceptions include some minor wording changes and cuts of longer sections for time. As an example of the first, the first question that Fine asks de Mille is who the idea for the ballet came from in Oklahoma. All versions of the interview emphasize de Mille saying it was her idea. And so in the January 30th, 1979 version, it states, I did alone, because I felt I could do a good one and I knew the American dancers would love it. On February 1st, the statement reads, me, I did. I wanted to so much. I know American dances and I love them. I thought I could do a good job. In the final cut, de Mille simply says, me, I did, and then she just repeats, I, while there's thunderous applause from the studio audience. So it doesn't include the brief explanation of why she wanted to do the ballet. Generally speaking, sections of the original interview include how she got the job, and why she thought the show was good, and those were cut from the final interview. Following the taping, DeMille sent Fine a letter on February 20th, 1979, with kind words and a couple of requests. In terms of the show itself, DeMille asked that they use all the best parts of each taping while leaving that estimation up to Fine and the rest of the production team. She also specifically requests that she receives a copy of the recorded ballet excerpts. While she notes that the length and choreography are not exactly the original, she refers to this recording as well done and nearly correct, and therefore worthy of preservation for her own historical records, since the originals were not preserved on film. So as this short case study illustrates, Fine worked closely with individual figures in musical theater to create her televised version of American musical theater history. She used personal connections and her considerable charm, as well as her wealth of knowledge and gift for detail throughout the entire process of creating the musical comedy Tonight series. Fine's work results in a meticulously planned and well-executed television special that, as advertised, both entertain and educate general audiences about American musical theater. Leveraging her successful songwriting career and business partnership with her husband, Sylvia Fine further forged a legacy as a public educator through this television series, a legacy that is well worth revisiting. Thank you.
Megan, huge congratulations on this fantastic paper, and it's such a great bridge from the display that Kate and Janet put on yesterday to see some narratives coming out.
And there was the photograph.
And there's the photograph.
Yeah, the songwriter photograph.
I love that clip of Agnes de Mille. I show it to my class, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I have to confess, I've never known what it came from. I just show it to them because it's so much fun seeing and go, I did it. Anyway, I was going to ask you, though, not knowing this show at all, the narratives that she's telling overall that are kind of historiographical, to what extent are these kind of original or significantly resisting the kind of stories about the progress of the musical that have been told before, other than putting herself in there? I mean, I love the fact that she lists herself as a songwriter, but I was struck, for example, I don't think Dorothy Fields was on there, which seems like a major omission of someone that could have been there.
Yeah.
So is there any sense of her kind of going, well, what about all the other people that could be on other shows, or is she really just doing a good job of presenting narratives that had already been established?
It's very canon, I would say. Yeah, I think it very much is going along with the narratives that have already been established, yeah. And because she was also working directly with creators, she had to placate them sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's part of that story as well. She actually couldn't do a second Sondheim show for any of the other series because he was not pleased with the performance of Ladies Who Lunch in the first one. So, yes.
Fantastic. We have 2 or 3 minutes for questions. Mark is going to come to people with a microphone. Stacey, yes. Thank you.
Megan, thank you so much. This was just incredibly interesting work and such beautiful use of the archives, and I'm so excited to see how this all develops. I wonder if you could just tell us a little. I was a little bit confused about how the different versions of the DeMille interview went. Were they all taped and then, or DeMille, like, how did that interaction work? Because it's a fascinating revision.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so they were not all taped. They had Particularly for the 2 scripts that I showed, she clearly, what they were transcribed from the blocking rehearsals. So as they were blocking, they were working out the shape of the interview, and then there were the 2 nights of taping. So I'm actually not entirely sure how much of what I see even got taped, because I don't have access to the 2 nights of filming, just the final and what was in there. So it was part rehearsal process, and then whatever they had taped, and then edit it down. Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
I have a question. It's not about the show, but I'm just very curious. What was Sylvia's musical education to become a composer herself?
I'm trying to think back. I believe she had like piano lessons. She's a pianist primarily. Other than that, I'm not sure. I'd have to look back. Yeah. Do you know?
Yes. Kelly and then...
Not a comment on that, but I have some questions from our Zoom audience.
Oh, great.
Okay, so let's go. Can we go with Kelly and then...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I have 1.5 questions. The first one is, you didn't note that, I don't mean that in a snarky way, that she had Mrs. Danny Kaye. I was wondering how much in what you saw or read does she lean on that overtly?
Yes.
And then the second thing is, this is just 5 years after Rock Hudson toured in I Do with Carol Burnett. So like clearly he wasn't like a complete moron in terms of, so I was wondering if there was anything, since both of them were on this together, if there was anything, if that was addressed in any way.
Actually, it wasn't. Yeah, which I find interesting with that context, because he appeared with Merman, and then Carol Burnett was in different sections. So no, and then yeah, very, very interesting in terms of when she calls herself Sylvia Fine K, or Mrs. Danny Kaye, right? And on the series, she introduces herself as Sylvia Fine, but she's credited as Sylvia Fine K, right? And then yeah, she's using his stationery a lot too for her own notes, and sometimes she is signing Mrs. Danny Kaye when writing to particular people. So I think it was strategic, is the sense that I get of when she did or did not lean on him. Yeah.
Interesting. I've seen that even with Rosalind Russell, who was married to Frederick Brisson, the producer, who was not a Danny Kaye type person in terms of fame, but her note paper also says Mrs. Frederick Brisson rather than Rosalind Russell. Anyway, Zoom questions.
Yes. Okay, first one. I've been studying Fine's ballads and charm songs of the 1930s through 1950s. I'd love it if you have any personal reactions to her body of work as a songwriter.
This is very new to me, this project. I'm very familiar with the songs that she wrote for Danny Kaye, for a lot of his performances, and I think she was a fantastic songwriter, and I can't wait to start to dig more into that aspect of her work. Yeah.
And one other from Zoom. What can you tell us about the content relationship between Fine's teaching at universities with the television programs?
Yeah. So I don't have I have not looked at, I have not seen any of the lectures themselves, but I know her whole idea was that she was basing this on those, and then it took different directions, but she has a huge body of the research that she did for those lectures, and that formed the basis of the proposals and everything. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Can we thank again Dr. Maid? And our next speaker is Alex Bádue, who is an assistant professor at Hamilton College. This is going to work beautifully. There we go. And his research interests include the American musical from the 1980s to the present. He's written a fantastic book about the sung-through musical, and he's currently at work, are we allowed to say this, on William Finn? It's not a secret. Yes, excellent. But he's here today to tell us about Caroline or Change, so please welcome Alex.
Hi all. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dom, and thank you for everyone for organizing this, the Library of Congress. So happy to be here. So if you know Caroline or Change, you know it's a very complex musical. It's very long and it's beautiful and complex, and I unfortunately don't have time to do everything, to talk about everything about this musical. So I am talking like about a fraction of it today. If you don't know the musical, I highly recommend that you can listen to the entire cast recording. It is sung through, and you get the entire show in the cast recording. So yeah, I'm more than happy to talk about other aspects of the show, the Q&A, but this is a small section of it. What I'm going to do in this paper, I'd like to provide a reading of the musical Caroline or Change by Jeanine Teosori based on her musical choices. And I would like to interpret the effects and subtext that her choices create. I will first contextualize the musicals in Teosori's career, including her ability to work in many music theater genres, and her focus on female protagonists. Then I will pay particular attention to Teosori's conception of black sound in Caroline or Change, focusing on three numbers by the three main female characters. I will discuss the genres of Black American vernacular and popular music that Teosori employs in this musical, what they signify, and implications that they have on the story and character development. So a little bit of the plot, and again, this is just a fraction of it. The plot takes place in November and December of 1963, Lake Charles, Louisiana. The first 5 scenes happen on the day of President John F. Kennedy's assassination. Caroline is an African-American maid. She has recently divorced, and she raises 4 kids, Larry, Amy, Jack, and Joe, making $30 a week. The family she works for, the Gelmans, consists of the father, Stuart, his 8-year son, Noah, and Stuart's second wife, and Noah's stepmother, Rose. Rose wants to teach Noah a lesson on how to keep money, and she instructs Caroline to keep all change that she finds in the pockets of Noah's pants when doing laundry. Caroline initially rejects the plan, but as she realized that a change as small as a penny makes a change for her and her children, she starts taking the money. Noah, who has recently lost his mother and lives with an emotionally distant father, sees Caroline as a friend and a mother figure. And he starts leaving change in his pockets on purpose. In the second act, Noah forgets a $20 bill in his pocket, and Caroline takes it. After they fight, Caroline returns the money but refuses to come back to work. Meanwhile, Caroline's daughter, Amy, is an avid participant of the civil rights movement and supporter of Martin Luther King Jr. Amy strongly believes that the social changes that are already happening. Amy strongly believes that social changes are already happening for Black Americans, a view that Caroline's friend, Dottie, also shares. After the fight with Noah, Caroline has an opportunity to choose between moving onward and no longer working as a maid, or returning to $30 a week and having a job that guarantees some security. Caroline or Change opened at the Public Theater in December 2003, directed by George C. Wolfe, and book and lyrics by Kushner, and had a successful 3-month run with Tonya Pinkins in the title role. It transferred to Broadway in May 2004, but in a season dominated by Avenue Q and Wicked, it closed after 4 months. Caroline or Change threads the fine line between opera and musical theater, mostly because of its sung-through score. The hybridity of the work is indicative of Teosori's ability and talent to cross over music theater genres. Cool. Her work for the theater ranged from book musicals like Thoroughly Modern Millie, Shrek the Musical, and Kimberly Akimbo, to full-blown operas like Blue and Grounded, which marks her Metropolitan Opera debut just last year. In the middle of all of this range, she has composed works that, like Caroline, showcase musical continuum that may approximate them structurally to opera, but feature popular music sound and performance practices, including also Violet and Fun Home. Teosori herself has referred to Caroline, the musical, as, quote, a people's opera and a reflection of America at its best, with all its different sounds, expressing collective and private worlds, end quote. Caroline, Or Change also reflects Teosori's interest in furthering female roles on the stage, as also exemplified by Violet in Violet, Millie in Thoroughly Modern Millie, Allison in Fun Home, Kimberly in Kimberly Akimbo, and Jess in Grounded. The songs that Teosori composed for Fiona in Shrek explores the character psychologically, which considerably differentiates the stage musical from the original animated film. Fiona's first song, I Know It's Today, introduces the character and her drama as a damsel in distress in 3 different stages of her life: a child, a teenager, and an adult woman, mirroring what Jeanine Teosori and Lisa Crone would later conceive to introduce and develop Allison in Fun Home, who we also get to see as a child, a teenager, as an adult. And if you know, even Hillary Clinton becomes a singing character in Soft Power. So Teosori has succeeded in not just challenging the ways to structure musicals, but also gender conventions that for decades pervaded musical theater. And her approach toward the potential challenges of a white artist telling Black stories has been generally well regarded, largely because of her collaborative efforts. In Blue, for example, which deals with a Black family and the tensions around police violence, she worked with librettist Tazewell Thompson, who also directed the opera's premiere, ensuring that the opera reflected a truthful representation of Black life and the complexities of race in the US. Thompson credits Teosori's ability to write music that is perfect for his characters, stating, quote, "It comes completely from her being in touch with the world, having her ears and eyes always open, watching, peering, getting involved," end quote. And if you remember, Blue was hugely impacted by the pandemic, but both Jeanine and Tazewell gave a lot of interviews at the time about this work and their partnership. In the case of Caroline, the partnership with Kushner was crucial because the story is the most autobiographical that Kushner has ever written. He, like Noah, grew up in a Jewish household in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and he was raised also by an African-American maid, Maudie Lee Davis, who helped his mother and who also actually got to see Caroline, Or Change on Broadway 2004 and allegedly told Tony Kushner, "Why is Caroline so angry?" she didn't think, Maudie didn't think she herself was that angry. In a way, Caroline, Or Change continues the story, this practice in American musical theater of white creators telling Black stories, like Porgy and Bess, No Strings, Dreamgirls, Once on This Island. But on the other hand, you have the performers, people like Tonya Pinkins, Annika Noni Rose, Sharon D. Clark, who also have played these characters and were happy to bring the stories to life through Jeanine Teosori's music. So I'm going to move on to the music, and I apologize in advance if I mess up my files here, but listen to this. So a little bit about the music and what Teosori does here with her exploration of sound. So I argue that, like George Gershwin in Porgy and Bess, Teosori invented her own melodies, harmonies, and textures in the style of early 1960s African-American music. The protagonist, Caroline, defining musical style, draws particularly from 3 genres: field holler, the blues, and gospel. Field holler is a form of unaccompanied and improvised vocal expression used to communicate usually sadness, loneliness, hunger, or fatigue. It evolved into the blues, which is marked by first-person narratives of sorrow and struggle. Both genres appear as early as the musical's first scene. Without an overture, the musical opens with Caroline doing laundry in the basement of the Gelmans, humming a tune a cappella that incorporates slides and cadences in unaccented beats, which are elements of field holler. So this is how the musical starts. Caroline then sings the blues, producing hoarse, greedy cries mixed with wails and short melismatic passages. The blues represents Caroline's isolation, frustration, and struggles with poverty. I'm going to play a little bit of I Got for Kids, which is also in the opening scene. It's pretty much Caroline's I Am song. So this is what it is, if you don't know.
I got 4 kids, 4 kids, 4 kids. I got divorced, had to. 4 kids, had to get divorced. Been 22 years of cleaning. For all them years I worked and prayed. Every day I doing laundry. 39 and still a maid.
This one is stop. There you go. It's okay. Can we go back? It's okay. Caroline also sings in gospel music or gospel style. Musical characteristics that had become part of the genre of gospel music between the 1940s and 60s, or I should say, Teosori uses the musical characteristics of gospel music that had become popular since the 40s, and it would have been the style of gospel music that Caroline would have listened to in 1963. And these characteristics recur in Caroline's music: a focus on low register, runs, shouts, held long notes, stretched vowels, improvised chromaticism, growl, falsetto, humming, moaning, and an electric organ accompaniment. When I interviewed Teosori, I asked her what the musical sound that she was thinking and the influences she had in mind to write Caroline's part, and she told me it was Etta James. I haven't talked to Jeanine since that day I interviewed her, but I'm becoming more and more convinced it's more Mahalia Jackson than Etta James. And I've been listening to a lot of Mahalia Jackson to make that argument, so more of that in the future. But anyway, gospel music infuses key moments in the score, including Gonna Pass Me a Law, songs like Gonna Pass Me a Law, Noah Goes to Sleep, and Underwater, which is the last song that Caroline sings. So, and this is a huge point here, instead of a melodic theme or a motif in this music, it is this musical style shaped by field holler, the blues, and gospel that functions as like a leitmotif associated with Caroline, the protagonist. To contrast, R&B and Motown represent and reflect youth, innovation, activism, and social change. R&B recording labels emerged all over the United States throughout the 50s, and a generation like Amy's grew up exposed to records from these labels, which became part of youth culture. Motown and the Detroit sound combined elements of R&B with pop, gospel, and big band, attracting a younger generation of listeners. As an example, which I'm not going to play, unfortunately, but Caroline's children sing in all of these styles in the Act 1 finale, right after Caroline gives them money for them to buy whatever they want for the first time in their lives. I will focus now on 3 scenes/songs, it is sung through, that exemplify the cultural significance of these genres and how they relate to characters and plot development. So I'm going to talk about Dottie and Caroline, that's the name of the characters and also the song, Amy's I Hate the Bus, and Lot's Wife, which is Caroline's 11 o'clock number. So let's start with Dottie and Caroline. So Dottie and line in Act 1 makes the contrast between the two characters evident. Dottie and Caroline run into each other at the bus stop after a day of work. Each character sings in their respective musical styles or genres as they exchange their dialogue. Dottie tells Caroline about changes in her life since they last saw each other. Although still working as a maid, Dottie goes to college after work, her employer supports her choice to get an education, and her boyfriend has a car, so she doesn't have to take the bus all the time. Dottie sings in the style of Motown, in duple meter, slow tempo, and swung beats, the bass line and finger snapping emphasizing strong beats, reminiscent of songs like the Marvelettes' Please Mr. Postman or The Temptations' My Girl. Caroline Clearly not on the same page, exhausted and not interested in conversation, replies and criticizes Dottie for changing too much. Caroline's singing disrupts Dottie's music with seventh chords in the accompaniment and blue notes in the melody. Caroline changes the mode to minor, and she constantly changes the time signature and uses triplets to accommodate her rapid patter. So here's just a little bit of the scene and how clever a dialogue is set to two different musical styles. So it starts with dialogue. I cannot.
Good evening, Caroline. Same.
Sorry.
Good evening, Caroline.
Same to you.
Oh, how you doing? How you been? It's warmish for November.
That's Dottie.
Getting dark early, huh? That bus better not be late. Miss Griffin been letting me off early these days on account of night school. She like having a maid going to college. Make her feel sort of fancy. I say it warmish for November. Listen to them frogs.
That's Dottie.
Expecting the moon. I hardly ever take the bus now. I got a boyfriend. He got a car. We never get to talk no more.
Knees hurt,
Caroline.
wore out. Same as yesterday, same tomorrow. Too tired to talk.
Well, how know it
Ain't
doing?
my job to mind that.
I knew I was going to do that. Okay. So these contrasting musical genres articulate personal and social transformations embedded in the ideological clash between Dottie and Caroline and mirror their differing attitudes toward change. Amy's ballad, I Hate the Bus, in Act 2, exemplifies a similar contrast, but now between Caroline and her daughter. The song occurs after Amy and Caroline have a fight in which Amy offends her mother for being a maid. Amy then sings about material needs which she believes will make her life more meaningful than her mother's. The music features a prominent theme texture that emphasizes the main melody, accompanied with minimal chord changes that mark the beat. Teosori told me that this was the first music she wrote for the musical. It was I Hate the Bus. The steady tempo and firm beats mirror Amy's resolute conviction that one must fight for and embrace social change. So just an excerpt of I Hate the Bus.
I hate the bus. I want my own car. A car with a heater, want a TV set and more. A big old house like this one, but everything new. Where can't nobody ever tell me what to do. Go out when I want to.
So I'll stop here. I Hate the Bus echoes the emotional sentiment and yearning found in A Change Is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke, which was released the next year in '64, so a year before the action. But Amy captures a similar sense of frustration and longing for something better, both personally and socially. The introspective tone and the message of hope amid struggles align with the emotional core of Cooke's song. And finally, Scene 11, Act 2, dramatizes Caroline's complex set of emotions. Kushner's title, I have a picture here, but Kushner's title for the scene, Lot's Wife, connects Caroline with the biblical tale of a woman who disobeyed God when she was told to not look back at the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah as she fled them. But then she did and was turned into salt as punishment. Caroline comes to terms with her situation and identity in this number. She decides that she can, spoiler alert, she decides that she cannot afford change, social change, and she cannot look forward, only backward, to her life before the fight with Noah. The biblical reference reflects Caroline's religiosity, but Kushner's approached this differently during his compositional process, which in turn played a part in Teosori's compositional decisions. In a draft of the libretto titled June 28, 1998, so years before the opening, which is now housed here at the Library of Congress in the Teosori papers. Last year, actually, I have found that Kushner had initially intended for Caroline to sing almost exclusively about Lot's wife. Accompanied by an imaginary choir, she literally explained that Lot's wife was trying to escape a destruction, but ultimately caused ruination. This is how the number ended in this early draft, and I don't think this was ever set to music by Teosori, but it goes, and her husband and children left her behind. She didn't mind. As they left her grieving, each one upon leaving broke off a piece, a handful of salt, as much as each was able, to put salt on the table and season their tears. After Luke 18, verse 32, Lot's wife disappears. End quote. Caroline believes that, like Lot's wife, she too will disappear, but the children will still be able to take something from her choice. If Caroline returns to work for the Gelmans, she can ensure that her children can grow and experience the social changes that she resists. She might disappear, but her children will carry on. Kushner and Teosori completely rewrote the lyrics for the 2003 original production. He reduced the religious tone considerably, and Lot's wife became an illusion. The number proved to be the most challenging one to complete for both Kushner and Teosori. They both struggled to articulate Caroline's thoughts and conflict. Teosori told me that, quote, "We talked about how people can't quite find a melody when they're uncomfortable. I remember these conversations about people who can't break out of the song that they've been singing. Caroline tries and then submerges," end quote. Indeed, the number, Lot's wife, reflects this statement. It starts with the musical styles associated with Caroline, the blues and the gospels, what I talked about earlier, and an array of techniques from recitatives to slides, wails, and long-held notes. At the number's climax, when Caroline makes her decision to not change, she tries to sing in a new style. She repeatedly asks, "What else, God?" And after singing the word flat 4 times in loud dynamics, a vocal glissando with a crescendo changes the key and culminates in a funky R&B accompaniment that for the first and only time firms Caroline in the new music of the 1960s. And this is Tanya Pinkins singing this section.
What else? What else? What else? What else, God? What else, God? Give me an armful. Slap on the iron, slap on the iron, flat, 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 flat. How about that? That's what Caroline can do. Let how she rearranges herself. Let how she
But then Caroline, after this moment, Caroline submerges, and Teosori found a clever way to connect Caroline to her children in the number's last section. Caroline reprises Amy's "I Hate the Bus." While Amy had sung the song about how she envisioned her future, Caroline brings in her characteristic wails, slides, and blue notes to sing about her miserable present. "Murder me, God," down in that basement. That's when she confesses, or Caroline confesses, not to be able to afford change, as you can see in the lyrics, and prays to be turned into salt. This is the only allusion to Lot's wife in the whole number. I was going to play, but I'm running out of time, so I highly recommend you listen to this, Lot's wife. This musical reprise of "I Hate the Bus" becomes a subtext that suggests that Caroline has been listening to Amy, considering her daughter's ideals, and Caroline knows what her children want. They all hate the bus. That's how I see it. But in order for them to not depend on it anymore, Caroline has to go back to working for the Gelmans so that her children can go to school and one day hopefully acquire the material desires and aspirations that Amy expresses in her song. I had written a whole conclusion here, but I'm going to improvise here right now. I have the privilege of teaching what I love at Hamilton, and I do teach a class on Broadway musicals every fall. And the homework for the Tuesday after Thanksgiving break is my students have to read the 2 scenes I just told you. I just talked to you guys of the first scene and the Audie and Caroline. That's the only homework, inspired by Stacey Wolf's article on teaching musical theater at Liberal Arts College. When we get together, I ask them to not listen to the music. When we're together in class, I cast the show. This last fall, we did all gender binding, so all the female characters were read by the boys and so forth. It was great. So we read these scenes together, and I cannot tell you how amazing it is to see the students' reaction to like compositional approaches. We do listen to some early 1960s music, and then these songs by Teosori, and just to see the students thinking about racialized sound, and what musical theater can be. Most of my students take this class because they love Wicked, which, yes, we have a whole section on Wicked. Of course we do. But it's amazing to see them thinking of the potentials of musical theater beyond the more commercial side of it, and just having them go, oh, this, like by reading and then listening to their music. So I highly recommend that you do that. So that's my improv for. Thank you so much for listening.
Alex, oh, is this working? Oh, sorry, you're gonna have to turn it on. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yes, good. Sorry you couldn't hear me before. I felt like I was coming across like the voice of doom, so I'm sorry if you couldn't hear me. Thank you so much, Alex, for reminding us what a great work this is. I remember when the show opened, and I saw it 20 years ago when it was around, and Tony Pinkin seemed like a cultural movement in itself. The whole thing seemed to have a lot of impact, but it wasn't around very long. And I was struck by your slide showing all the Teosori shows now, and I just wonder whether maybe the problem that she had was that she has now developed a body of works which have helped her to be understood as, a major artist. It seems to be something that's required of canon formation, to go back to our previous papers. So do you think that maybe if it had been work number 5 or work number 6 or later on that maybe it would...
I believe so.
Yeah.
When I interviewed her the first time, it was a week after she had won the Tony for Fun Home. And when we sat together, she said, I'm so happy we're not talking about Fun Home because it's been like so much. But Fun Home, and it was the first time that the creative team was all female. I think it really put her out there in terms of like besides us who love musical theater, we knew who she was. But I do think that if Caroline had come after Fun Home, maybe the reception would have been different. Also, there's a whole subplot in this musical about toppling Confederate statues. So the London revival in 2018 played with it, and then when it came to Broadway in 2022, they also had the whole statue. And I can talk about the statue forever, but I think also what's happening in the U.S. and also in other parts of the world in terms of us coming to terms with racial issues in our societies, I think that also has played, that's what my other conclusion is going to be. That he had to put Caroline, like a performance of Caroline or Change can always remind us what's going on and still resonates. So I think that, maybe 2004 wasn't the best time, but it's like a Sondheim show. Every time I go back to it, I find something new. Yeah.
There's always more rather than it just being familiar. Any questions from the audience? Stacey?
I always have questions, but I don't want to...
No, please.
Thank you so much. This is just beautiful. I love
you.
the show so much. I completely agree. Every time you go back to it, you hear something new, and this was just phenomenal. Can I take you a little to the side and ask you to talk about the Jewish music in the show?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I don't know if you guys know, but Tony Kushner's parents were professional musicians. His mother actually was conducted by Stravinsky at some point. So classical music comes from it is from that side. And Jeanine told me that she actually asked his father, like, what do you want Stewart's and the Gelman's music to be? Because that's where it's coming from. That's why there's a whole quotation of Mozart's clarinet concerto when he's practicing, and that's coming from the father. And so my understanding is that there was a conversation from Kushner's family and their side of the family in creating that music. There's a whole Hanukkah party, and there's a clarinetist. The Stewart plays the clarinet, and it's from my understanding, it was informed from conversations with Kushner's and Kushner's family. And I also remember Jeanine talking to me about how she saw the score of Caroline pretty much like the house. So the quote-unquote lower music in the basement, and the moon, which sings in this musical, sings opera. So how opera is up there, and the blues and all Field Holler and all these other musics are in the basement, and Jewish music is in the middle. It's on the first floor. But I cannot talk about her like the same way I talked about her came up with her black sound, I cannot talk about, I actually never asked her or don't know much about like, because it sounds very clamor, and it is cited in every single review of the show. So, but I don't know exactly her approach to writing it, that I don't, but yeah.
Fantastic. We've got time for one more question, if there is one. Yes.
Hi, I'm just wondering if you have a sense of George C. Wolfe's, if there have been any input from him as the director and the one, I guess, major black collaborator, especially since he is also a writer as well. Just any like.
Thank you. That was a section I had to cut. Awesome. So this Carolina Change actually started as an opera commission in San Francisco. So Tony Kushner wrote this for an opera with Bob McFerrin. And then that didn't happen. And then Kushner had worked with George C. Wolfe in Angels in America. So he took the libretto of this opera. And it was George C. Wolfe who said, this has to be a musical. This will not be an opera. And I know the right person. It is this Jeanine Teosori. So it was, George C. Wolfe is the connection who made that happen. And of course, yes, you're absolutely right. You know, bring in the funk, bring in the noise, or bring in the noise, bring in the funk. I'm sorry if I messed up the title of this, but that was also in the 90s and coming out of that. George C. Wolfe's presence in musical theater, that was a big part of it. And yes, the epilogue of Carolina Change and Lot's Wife were the two biggest numbers, and they struggled a lot, and it was done very late. Like, Lot's Wife was not orchestrated until opening night. So it was very late, and George C. Wolfe it was like musical theater. It was a collaborator. He was a big part of blocking the scene as Jeanine was writing the music, so it was the partnership was strong to create these two numbers. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Can we thank Alex again?
Thank you.